The crystal wine glass slipped from my tray in slow motion. I watched, helpless, as Cabernet Sauvignon arced through the air and splashed across the most expensive suit I'd ever seen. Charcoal grey, perfectly tailored, now stained crimson. "Oh my God," I gasped. "I'm so sorry." The man looked down at his ruined shirt, then up at me. Steel grey eyes met mine, and I forgot how to breathe. He was maybe late 30s, with sharp features and dark hair silvered at the temples. A thin scar traced his jawline. "It's fine," he said, his accent slight but distinct, Russian maybe. "It's not fine. Your suit I'll pay for the cleaning. It's just a suit." He caught my wrist gently, stopping my frantic dabbing. "Breathe. Accidents happen." I did breathe, suddenly aware of his touch, warm and firm. "I'm really sorry, Mr. Constantine," he supplied. A slight smile touched his lips. "And you are?" "Fired, probably," I muttered, glancing toward my manager Marco, glaring from the bar. Emma Hayes. Well, Emma Hayes." Constantine leaned back, unconcerned about the wine soaking through. "Tell Marco that if he fires you, he'll lose my business. And I'm a very good customer." The kindness caught me off guard. Most customers would have demanded to see the manager by now. This man, clearly wealthy, clearly important, was showing me more grace than I'd seen in 2 years serving at the Meridian. "Thank you," I said softly. "That's really kind. It's honest." His eyes held mine for a beat too long. "Now, could you bring me water?" "I should leave before I smell like a vineyard." I nodded, backing away on unsteady legs. As I returned to the bar, Marco's expression shifted from fury to relief. I'd gotten lucky. This Constantine had just saved my job. But luck, I was about to learn, cuts both ways. While filling his water glass, I overheard 2 men at the bar's end. They weren't regulars, too tense, too watchful, with hard eyes that had seen violence. Tonight, the taller one muttered into his phone. A hit on Constantine. "Here, at the Meridian." Confirmed. My blood froze. "Sokolov wants it public," the shorter one added. A message. I gripped the water glass. They were talking about killing someone. Killing him, the kind stranger who'd saved my job 5 minutes ago. Every rational instinct screamed at me to stay out of it. I had a younger brother to support, rent due next week, and no business getting involved in whatever world this man inhabited. But I'd never been good at rational decisions. I walked back to his table, hands trembling. Constantine was checking his phone, his profile sharp in the candlelight. "Your water, sir," I said, setting it down. As I leaned forward with the napkin, I dropped my voice to barely a whisper. "They're planning to kill you. Leave now." His head snapped up, steel grey eyes locking onto mine with startling intensity. For 3 heartbeats, neither of us moved. "Why?" he said slowly, dangerously quiet. "Would you risk yourself for me?" I opened my mouth to answer. The front windows exploded inward. Glass rained down like deadly snow as gunfire erupted through the Meridian. Screams pierced the air. I hit the floor, my ears ringing, my heart hammering. Strong hands grabbed my shoulders, pulling me under the table. Constantine's body covered mine, shielding me as bullets tore through the restaurant. "Stay down," he commanded, his breath hot against my ear. Chaos surrounded us, shattering glass, screaming patrons, the sharp crack of gunfire. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only feel the solid weight of him protecting me from violence I couldn't comprehend. Then, silence, terrible and complete. Constantine shifted, his hand cupping the back of my head. "Are you hurt?" I shook my head, mute with shock. "Good." He pulled back slightly, studying my face. "Emma Hayes, you just saved my life. Unfortunately, that means I now have to save yours." "What?" "Those men saw you warn me." His jaw tightened. "Which means you're a witness they'll want eliminated. You're coming with me. Now." Before I could process his words, he was pulling me to my feet, his grip firm on my elbow as he guided me through the destroyed restaurant toward a back exit. His security team materialized from nowhere, 4 men in dark suits, forming a protective barrier around us. "I don't understand," I stammered, my legs barely working. "I need to. My manager is already calling the police." Constantine didn't slow down. "By the time they arrive, you need to be somewhere safe." "Safe? I don't even know you." He paused at the exit, those steel grey eyes burning into mine. "You knew enough to save my life. Now let me return the favor." A black SUV waited in the alley, engine running. One of his men opened the door. Every instinct told me not to get in. But as I heard sirens wailing in the distance and remembered the cold calculation in those killers' eyes at the bar, I realized something terrifying. The most dangerous choice might be refusing his protection. I got in the car. Constantine slid in beside me, and the door closed with a decisive click that sounded like fate sealing shut. "Where are we going?" I asked, my voice small. He glanced at me, something almost like regret flickering across his face. "Somewhere they can't find you. Somewhere you'll be mine to protect, whether you want it or not." The SUV pulled away from the Meridian, leaving behind my normal life and carrying me towards something I couldn't yet name, something dangerous and inevitable, and already far too late to escape. I woke to unfamiliar softness and blinding light. For a disoriented moment, I thought I'd died. The bed beneath me felt like a cloud, wrapped in sheets with a thread count I couldn't even imagine. Floor-to-ceiling windows stretched across an entire wall, revealing a city skyline I recognized but had never seen from this height. This wasn't my cramped studio apartment with its water-stained ceiling and traffic noise. Memory crashed back, the wine, the warning, the gunfire. My heart rate spiked as I bolted upright, searching for threats in this pristine, unfamiliar space. "You're awake." I spun toward the voice. Constantine stood in the doorway, no longer wearing the wine-stained suit. Instead, he was dressed in dark slacks and a charcoal sweater that somehow made him look more dangerous than the formal attire had. His steel-grey eyes tracked my movements with predatory focus. "Where am I?" My voice came out rough with sleep and fear. "My penthouse." He stepped into the room, hands in his pockets, a casual gesture that didn't match the tension in his shoulders. "You've been asleep for 6 hours. The doctor said you were in shock." "Doctor?" I touched my temple, finding a small bandage I hadn't noticed. "What happened after? After the restaurant?" 3 men dead, 7 injured, and $500,000 in property damage." His tone was matter-of-fact, like he was discussing stock prices. "The police are calling it gang violence." "They're not wrong." I swung my legs off the bed, noting I was still in my work clothes, black slacks and white blouse, now wrinkled and smelling faintly of gunpowder. "I need to go home. My brother will be worried. And I have a shift tomorrow. You don't work at the Meridian anymore." Constantine moved to the windows, his silhouette sharp against the morning light. "The restaurant is closed indefinitely. And as for your brother, my people have already contacted him. He thinks you're staying with a friend after a traumatic experience." Heat flared in my chest. "You had no right. I had every right." He turned, his gaze pinning me in place. "Those men saw you warn me, Emma, which makes you a witness to an attempted assassination orchestrated by the Sokolov organization. Do you understand what that means?" I didn't, but the way he said it made my skin prickle with dread. "It means they'll want to eliminate you," he continued, his voice softer but no less intense. "Not out of revenge, but practicality. Loose ends get tied up in my world, permanently." The room suddenly felt too small, the luxury around me transforming into an elegant cage. "So what? I'm just supposed to hide here. For how long?" "Until the threat is eliminated." He pulled my phone from his pocket, holding it out. "You're free to leave if you want. Call anyone. Tell them where you are. But know that by tomorrow, everyone you contact will be under surveillance. Your brother, your friends, your landlord, anyone connected to you becomes a potential target or informant." I stared at the phone in his hand, understanding the trap. "That's not a choice." "No," he agreed, something almost like regret crossing his features. "It's not. But I'd rather you hate me for being honest than resent me for lying." He set the phone on the nightstand. You can stay here willingly, under my protection, with access to anything you need. Or you can leave, and I'll have my people shadow you from a distance. Either way, your life as you knew it is over. I'm sorry. The apology surprised me. So did the sincerity in his voice. I moved to the window, pressing my palm against the cool glass. Below, the city sprawled in miniature people living their ordinary lives. Unaware that one impulsive decision in a restaurant had shattered mine completely. How long? I asked, not looking at him. Until this threat is eliminated? The silence stretched so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Could be weeks. His voice came from directly behind me now, close enough that I could feel his presence like heat. Could be months. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of it, this strange, impossible situation. I'd saved a stranger's life and lost my own in the process. And if I stay, I whispered, what exactly are you protecting me from? His reflection appeared in the glass beside mine, his expression carved from stone. Everything, Emma. I'm protecting you from everything my world touches. Including, perhaps especially, from me. The warning in his words should have terrified me. Instead, it made me want to turn around and demand the truth, not just about the danger outside these walls, but about the man who'd built them. I didn't turn. Not yet. But I didn't reach for my phone either. 3 days in Constantine's penthouse, and I'd learned its rhythms like a prisoner learns the patterns of her cell. He left early each morning before dawn, dressed in those perfectly tailored suits that probably cost more than my yearly rent. He returned late, sometimes smelling of cigars and expensive scotch, sometimes with tension carved into his shoulders that made me keep my distance. We existed in careful orbit around each other, polite, distant, two strangers sharing space neither of us had chosen. Until the morning I found the folder. It sat on the kitchen counter beside my coffee, a plain manila folder with my name typed across the tab. My hands trembled as I opened it, already knowing somehow that whatever was inside would change things. The first page was my resume. Not the sanitized version I'd submitted to the Meridian, but something more comprehensive. Every job I'd held since turning 16. My student loan debt, listed to the penny. My brother Danny's community college tuition payments, annotated with dates I'd been late. I flipped through page after page, my chest tightening with each revelation. My mother's death certificate from the cancer that had taken her 4 years ago. My apartment lease, including the violation notice I'd received last month for late payment. Bank statements, credit card debt, and then, on the final page, something that made my blood run cold, Daniel Hayes' gambling debts. $47,000, no, not Danny, my father. Daniel Hayes Sr., the man who'd disappeared from my life 3 years ago, leaving nothing but silence and, apparently, a catastrophic debt I knew nothing about. You researched me. Constantine's voice came from behind me. I hadn't heard him enter, but there he stood in the kitchen doorway, coffee cup in hand, watching me with those steel-grey eyes that saw too much. I protect my investments, he said simply. I'm not an investment. I slammed the folder shut. I'm a person whose privacy you violated. You became my responsibility the moment you warned me. He moved closer, setting his cup down. In my world, Emma, ignorance kills. I needed to know everything, your vulnerabilities, your pressure points, anyone who could be used against you. My father left years ago. Whatever debts he has aren't my problem. They will be. Constantine's expression was maddeningly calm. The men he owes don't care about estrangement, care about blood. And in 6 weeks, when that debt comes due, they'll come looking for his daughter. The kitchen suddenly felt airless. How much? $47,000. He studied my face. Which you don't have. I laughed, the sound bitter. I barely have $47 after rent. So what? You're telling me this to watch me panic? To remind me how powerless I am? I'm telling you because I can make it disappear. The offer hung between us, too enormous to process. Why would you do that? I asked, my voice barely audible. Constantine was quiet for a long moment, his gaze never leaving mine. When he spoke, his voice was softer than I'd ever heard it. Because you saved my life without knowing who I was or what I could do for you. You risked everything for a stranger who spilled wine on his shirt and smiled. He took a step closer. That kind of purity is rare in my world, Emma. Perhaps non-existent. I won't let it be punished. Something in my chest cracked open, not quite trust, but something close to understanding. I can't let you pay my father's debts, I said. I won't owe you. You already saved my life. Consider us even. That's not how this works. If you pay that money, I'm in your debt. That gives you power over me. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. I already have power over you. You're living in my home, under my protection, cut off from your life. This? He gestured to the folder. This is just me using that power to keep you safe. I wanted to argue. I wanted to refuse out of principle, out of pride. But I thought of my brother, of the kind of men who loan money to desperate gamblers. The kind of men who wouldn't care that I'd had nothing to do with my father's choices. I need to think about it, I said finally. Constantine nodded once. Take all the time you need. He left me alone in the kitchen with the folder and my coffee, now cold. That night, I couldn't sleep. I paced the guest bedroom, weighing impossible choices, until exhaustion finally pulled me under near dawn. When I awoke, there was a new folder on the nightstand. Inside, legal documents stamped and notarized, showing that Daniel Hayes Sr.'s debt had been paid in full. $47,000 settled in a single transaction. I never said yes. But Constantine had decided for me anyway. And somehow that terrified me more than the debt ever had. I found him in his study, signing documents with the focused precision of a surgeon. You had no right. I threw the folder onto his desk, the papers scattering across polished mahogany. Constantine looked up slowly, his expression unreadable. Good morning to you too. Don't. My hands were shaking with anger I hadn't known I possessed. Don't act like this is normal. You paid off my father's debt without my permission. You made me beholden to you. You're not beholden to me. Then what do you call this? I gestured wildly at the opulent study, the city view, the invisible walls keeping me here. I can't leave. I can't contact my friends. I can't even make my own choices about my family's problems. You've taken everything. I've kept you alive. His voice was still calm, but something dark flickered behind his eyes. That debt would have come due, Emma, and when it did, they would have used you to find your father. Do you know what that means? Do you understand what men like that do to collect? So you're my savior. Bitterness dripped from my words. My white knight? He stood abruptly, the movement sharp enough to make me step back. I'm not a good man. I've built my empire on fear and violence. I've done things that would make you sick if you knew the details. His jaw tightened. But you looked at me like I was worth saving. Like I was something more than the monster everyone else sees. The raw honesty in his voice caught me off guard. I don't know what you want from me, I said, quieter now. I don't either. He ran a hand through his hair, a surprisingly human gesture of frustration. I just need you to survive this. To be safe, even if you hate me for it. We stood in tense silence, the morning light casting sharp shadows across his face. For the first time, I noticed the exhaustion around his eyes, the weight he carried in his shoulders. Tell me about your sister, I said. He went very still. Who told you? The folder. It mentioned family. Your parents in Moscow, deceased. A sister, also deceased. I met his gaze. You said I needed to understand your world. So help me understand. For a long moment I thought he'd refuse. Then he moved to the window, his back to me. Katya. She was 21. His voice was hollow. Wrong place, wrong time. A rival organization targeted me, and she was in the car when they opened fire. She died because I wasn't careful enough. Because I thought I could keep my family separate from my business. My anger evaporated, replaced by something achingly sad. How old were you? 23. He turned, and I saw the ghost of that younger man in his eyes. It hardened me into what I am now. What I had to be to survive, to make sure no one I cared about ever got caught in crossfire again. Is that why you're protecting me? Because I remind you of her? No. His gaze held mine. I'm protecting you because losing you would break something in me I didn't know still existed. The confession hung between us, raw and dangerous. That night, I found him on the terrace at midnight, whiskey in hand, staring at the city lights. Against every instinct telling me to keep my distance, I slid open the glass door and joined him. Can't sleep? He asked without looking at me. Neither can you, apparently. He offered me his glass. Took it. The whiskey burning warm down my throat. We talked until dawn about my dream of opening a bakery, about his mother's garden in Moscow, about the lives we might have lived if circumstances had been different. He told me about learning to bake bread with his grandmother, about the books his sister had loved, about the man he'd been before violence became his language. For the first time I saw past the dangerous exterior to someone achingly lonely. As the sun rose, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose, he turned to me. You're free to leave, Emma. His voice was rough with exhaustion and something deeper. I'll arrange security from a distance, protection without the cage. You don't have to stay here with me. My heart stumbled over itself. He was giving me an out. A real choice, after days of having every decision made for me. I should have taken it. Should have run from this dangerous man and his violent world. Instead, I asked the question that terrified me most. What if I want to stay? His eyes darkened, hope and fear warring in their depths. Then you're making a terrible mistake, he whispered, because I won't be able to let you go. I packed my belongings in silence while Constantine made calls in his study. The guest room felt different now, less like a prison, more like a crossroads. Everything I'd brought from that chaotic night fit into a single duffel bag. My life, reduced to wrinkled work clothes and a phone I was afraid to use. Constantine's driver was waiting downstairs. One word from me and I'd be free, except I wouldn't be. Not really. I'd be looking over my shoulder for my father's creditors. Living in fear of Sokolov's organization. Wondering if every stranger on the street was a threat. And worst of all, I'd be wondering about him. The dangerous man who read poetry in Russian and carried the weight of his dead sister like stones in his pockets. My hand hovered over the zipper. What if I want to stay? The question I'd asked at dawn echoed in my mind. I'd seen his answer in the way his breath had caught, the way hope had flickered in those steel-grey eyes before he'd buried it under control. Because I won't be able to let you go. I looked around the room, the luxury I'd initially resented. The windows overlooking a city that suddenly felt smaller than this penthouse. This wasn't about the money or the safety anymore. It was about the man who remembered I took my coffee with oat milk, who'd paid a debt that wasn't his to shoulder, who looked at me like I was the only real thing in his manufactured world. I unpacked my bag. Each item returned to the dresser felt like a choice. My work shoes, my phone charger, the cheap bracelet my brother had given me for my birthday. Piece by piece, I reclaimed the space. When Constantine returned an hour later, I was sitting on the bed, hands folded in my lap. He stopped in the doorway, his gaze going immediately to the empty duffel on the floor, then to my face. Emma. My name came out rough, almost broken. What are you doing? I'm staying. The words were steady, certain. Not because I'm afraid to leave. Not because I owe you, but because I choose you. He crossed the room in 3 strides, his hands framing my face with a gentleness that contradicted everything dangerous about him. Why? Because I see you. I reached up to cover his hands with mine. Not Konstantin Volkov, the name that makes grown men nervous, not the criminal empire or the violence. I see the man who mourns his sister, who remembers his mother's garden, who looked at a clumsy waitress like she mattered. You're making a terrible mistake, he whispered, but his thumbs traced my cheekbones like I was something precious. I know. I smiled despite the fear humming through my veins. But it's mine to make. He kissed me then, desperate, and tender and claiming all at once. His hand slid into my hair, tilting my head back as he deepened the kiss. And I tasted whiskey and want and something that felt dangerously like belonging. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he pressed his forehead to mine. "I don't deserve this," he murmured. "Don't deserve you. Maybe not." I traced the scar along his jaw. "But I'm choosing you anyway. Every part of you, Constantine. The poetry and the violence, the protection and the control, all of it." His arms wrapped around me, pulling me close. We stayed like that for a long time, the city moving below us, the world continuing while we carved out this impossible moment. That night, I fell asleep in his bed instead of the guest room. His heartbeat steady beneath my ear, his fingers trailing through my hair. I woke to his phone buzzing insistently on the nightstand. He answered it with a curt greeting in Russian, his body going rigid against mine. I didn't understand the words, but I understood the tone, cold, controlled fury. When he hung up, his jaw was tight enough to shatter. "What's wrong?" I asked, sitting up. He turned to me, and I saw the apology in his eyes before he spoke. "The Meridian was burned down 3 hours ago." His voice was carefully neutral. "They knew you worked there. It's a message to me, and to you. They know you're connected to me now." The blood drained from my face. "Was anyone hurt?" "No. It happened after closing. But Emma," he took my hand. "This is what choosing me means. This is the world you're stepping into." I thought of Marco, of the other servers, of the restaurant that had been my livelihood for 2 years. All of it, gone because I'd whispered a warning to a dangerous man. "Do you regret staying?" Constantine asked quietly. I looked at him, really looked at him, at the man willing to go to war to keep me safe, at the impossible situation we'd found ourselves in. "No," I said, and meant it. "But I need you to promise me something. Anything. No more decisions without me. No more paying debts or making choices about my life. If I'm in this," I squeezed his hand, "then I'm in this. Equal partners in whatever comes next." Something shifted in his expression, surprise, respect, and that dangerous hope again. "Equal partners," he agreed, raising my hand to his lips. "Even when I want to lock you away from everything that could hurt you. Especially then." He kissed me again, sealing the promise. Outside, the sun rose on a city that would never look the same. The man who'd held me through the night was gone. In his place stood someone I barely recognized. Cold, precise, dangerous in ways that made the air around him feel sharp. Constantine paced his study like a caged predator, phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid-fire Russian to people I couldn't see. I stood in the doorway watching him transform. 3 teams, he said in English, switching languages mid-conversation. "I want eyes on every Sokolov property by noon, and find out who authorized the fire." He ended the call, immediately making another. His jaw was set in hard lines, his eyes flat and calculating. This was the man who'd built an empire on fear, the one who made grown men nervous with a single look. Constantine. He held up one finger, silencing me without a word. I bristled but stayed quiet, watching him orchestrate whatever war he was planning with the efficiency of a general. When he finally looked at me, I saw the apology flicker across his face before control locked it away. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "Where else would I be? I moved into the study. You said equal partners. This isn't a partnership decision." His tone was sharp enough to cut. "This is me protecting what's mine. I'm not a possession right now. That's exactly what you are." He turned back to his laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard. "Sokolov burned down the Meridian as a message. He's testing me, seeing if I'll retaliate. If I don't, I look weak. If I do, this escalates into full war." My stomach dropped. "What are you going to do?" "What I have to." He pulled up security footage, grainy images of men I didn't recognize entering and exiting buildings. "I'm going after his operations. His money. His people." "His people," I repeated. "You mean you're going to hurt them?" Constantine's eyes met mine, and I saw the truth there, cold and unapologetic. Yes, the single word hung between us. No justification, no softening, just brutal honesty. I should have been horrified. Should have run from this man planning violence with the same calm focus most people used for grocery shopping. But I'd asked for this to see all of him, not just the gentle parts. "Does this frighten you?" he asked, watching me carefully. Yes. I moved closer despite the fear humming through my veins. But I'm not leaving. Something shifted in his expression, relief mixed with something darker. "I need you to stay here tomorrow night. I'm meeting with Sokolov's lieutenant. It won't be pleasant. Take me with you." No. The answer was immediate, absolute. "You promised. I promised partnership, not suicide." His hands gripped the edge of his desk. "These men are animals, Emma. What I have to do to them, what they'd do to you if they had the chance." He shook his head. "I won't expose you to that. But you'll come back covered in it," I said quietly. "You'll carry that violence back to this penthouse, back to me. Don't you think I should understand what that means? Really understand it?" He stared at me for a long moment, conflict clear in his face. "I can't take you there," he said finally. "But I won't lie to you about what happens. When I come back, if you want to know details, I'll tell you. All of it, no matter how ugly. It wasn't what I'd asked for, but it was more than most men in his position would offer." "Promise me something," I said. "Promise you'll come back. I always come back." He pulled me against his chest, his heartbeat strong beneath my ear. "I've something worth coming back to now." That night he was gentler with me than before, as if memorizing the feel of my skin, the sound of my breathing. We made love with desperate intensity, affirming life in the shadow of violence he was about to commit. In the darkness afterward, I traced the scars on his chest, each one a story I didn't know yet. "I'm going to be different when I come back tomorrow," he whispered against my hair. "Harder, colder. It takes time to come back from that headspace. I'll be here anyway, I promised." His arms tightened around me. "God help you, Emma. You should have run when you had the chance." Maybe, but as sleep pulled me under, his warmth surrounding me, I knew one truth with absolute certainty. I'd made my choice. And I'd keep making it, no matter how dark the path ahead became. I stayed awake all night. The penthouse felt too large, too empty, without Constantine's presence filling it. I tried reading, watching television, anything to distract myself from imagining what he was doing in some warehouse or back alley across the city. At 3 a.m., I heard the private elevator open. I rushed to the foyer, my heart in my throat. Constantine stood there, backlit by the elevator's soft glow, and my breath caught. His suit jacket was gone. His white shirt was untucked, the sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms marked with bruises already darkening to purple. His knuckles were split and raw, blood dried in the creases of his skin. But it was his eyes that stopped me flat and cold, looking through me rather than at me. "Constantine." I moved toward him slowly, as if approaching something wild. He blinked, and I watched awareness return to his gaze. "Emma." His voice was hoarse. "You should be asleep." "So should you." I took his hand gently, examining the damage. "Come on, let me clean these." He followed me to the bathroom without protest, moving like a man carrying weights I couldn't see. I guided him to sit on the edge of the bathtub while I gathered supplies: antiseptic, bandages, warm water. "2 of them are dead," he said flatly as I began cleaning his knuckles. "The others will deliver my message to Sokolov. You're untouchable." I should have been horrified. Should have recoiled from his blood-stained hands. Instead, I focused on each split knuckle, each bruise, tending to him with steady hands even as my heart raced. "Did they suffer?" I asked quietly. "Does it matter?" "I don't know." I met his gaze. "I'm trying to understand what you had to do. What you become when you leave here." He caught my wrist, his grip gentle, despite the violence still humming beneath his skin. "I become a monster. The thing everyone fears. The name whispered in back rooms and dark alleys. And then I come back here, to you, and remember, I'm still capable of being human." I finished bandaging his right hand and started on his left. "Tell me what happened. Emma, you promised." No lies about the ugly parts. So he told me. Not every detail, but enough. The warehouse. The interrogation. The moment one of Sokolov's men reached for a weapon and sealed both their fates. He spoke in that flat, emotionless tone. The only way, I realized, he could speak about it at all. When he finished, silence stretched between us. "You should be running from me," he said finally. "Should be disgusted." I set aside the bandages and cupped his face in my hands, forcing him to look at me. "I'm exactly where I choose to be." Something cracked in his expression that carefully maintained control, fragmenting. "How can you still look at me like that, after knowing what I've done?" "Because I see all of you." I traced the line of his jaw, the poetry, and the violence. The man who mourns, and the man who kills. "I'm not in love despite your darkness, Constantine. I'm in love with all of it. With you." The confession hung between us, the first time either of us had said that word aloud. His hands came up to cover mine, his eyes searching my face as if trying to find the lie, the fear, the revulsion he expected. He found none. "Emma," he breathed, then pulled me to him, kissing me with desperate need. We moved to his bedroom, our bodies speaking what words couldn't taff, a choice of love, existing even in the shadow of death. Afterward, tangled in sheets with dawn approaching, he reached for something on his nightstand. "I have something for you," he said, pressing a key into my palm. I held it up to the dim light, confused. "What is this?" "A bakery space. Downtown, near the waterfront." His voice was rough with emotion. "It's in your name. Fully paid for a year, renovations included. If you still want a future after ... He gestured vaguely at himself, at the blood-stained shirt discarded on the floor. After this, tears burned my eyes. This dangerous man, covered in bruises from violence he'd committed, was giving me a dream I'd barely dared to voice. "Why?" I whispered. "Because loving me shouldn't mean losing yourself." He pulled me closer. "Because you deserve something beautiful that's entirely yours." I kissed him, tasting salt from tears I didn't remember crying. "Thank you." We fell asleep as the sun rose, his arms around me, the key clutched in my hand, a promise that even in his dark world, there was still room for light. The grocery store felt absurdly normal. I pushed a cart through aisles of produce and baked goods, Constantine's security detail maintaining a discreet distance. 2 weeks had passed since the night he'd come home with blood on his hands. 2 weeks of settling into a rhythm that felt almost domestic if you ignored the armed men and the empire built on violence. I was debating between sourdough and rye when a woman in a navy pantsuit appeared beside me. Emma Hayes. She flashed a badge too quickly for me to read the name. Agent Morrison, FBI. "We'd like to ask you some questions about Konstantin Volkov." My blood turned to ice. It's not a request." Her smile was professional and cold. "You can come voluntarily, or we can make this official. Your choice." I glanced toward Konstantin's men, but Morrison shook her head. "They're smart enough not to interfere with a federal investigation. Come on, my car's outside." The FBI field office was everything I'd expected. Fluorescent lights, bland walls, and a metal table in an interrogation room where Morrison and her partner, a broad-shouldered man named Chun, grilled me for 3 hours. "You were working at the Meridian the night of the shooting," Morrison said, sliding crime scene photos across the table. "Multiple witnesses place you at Volkov's table minutes before the attack. I was serving him. That's my job, was my job. And you just happened to be there when assassins opened fire." Chun leaned forward. "Convenient. Terrifying, actually." They pressed harder. Questions about Constantine's business, his associates, his properties. What did I know? What had I seen? What had he told me? I answered with variations of "I don't know" until Morrison changed tactics. "Emma, you seem like a smart woman. Too smart to throw your life away for a criminal." She softened her voice. "We can protect you. Witness protection, new identity, enough money to start over anywhere you want. Your brother, too." My heart stuttered. "I'm not a witness to anything. You're living with him," Chun interjected. That makes you an accessory. We have enough to charge you right now. Obstruction, conspiracy, aiding, and abetting. Fear clawed at my throat, but beneath it something else burned. Anger. Then charge me. I met his gaze. Otherwise, I'd like to speak to a lawyer. Morrison sighed. We're offering you a way out, Emma, a chance at a normal life. All you have to do is tell us what you know about Volkov's operations. Help us build a case. I thought of Constantine holding me through nightmares. His hands bandaged from violence committed to keep me safe. The bakery key on my nightstand, a promise of something beautiful in his dark world. I have nothing to say, I told them. They tried for another hour before Constantine's lawyer arrived, threatening lawsuits and unlawful detention, until they had no choice but to release me. I walked out into twilight to find Constantine waiting on the steps, flanked by his security team. His face was carved from stone, unreadable except for the tension in his jaw. You could have taken their offer, he said quietly as I approached. Witness protection, new identity, a life without me and everything I bring. His eyes searched mine. You're free to leave, Emma. I'd understand, in answer. I grabbed his tie and pulled him down, kissing him fiercely in full view of the federal building and whatever cameras were watching. When I pulled back, his eyes were dark with emotion. Why? Because I already chose you. I kept my hand fisted in his tie. That doesn't change because they offered me an exit. It doesn't change because they threatened me. I chose you, Constantine. That's final. He pulled me against him, his arms tight enough to hurt. God, Emma. That night, in the quiet of the penthouse, he poured 2 glasses of vodka and handed me one. I need to ask you something, he said. And I need you to think carefully before answering. Okay, marry me. I nearly dropped my glass. What? Not for romance, though, his voice roughened. Though I do love you. More than I thought I was still capable of. He took my hand. But for protection. As my wife, you have legal rights. Spousal privilege. They can't force you to testify against me. My breath caught. You're asking me to marry you for legal immunity. I'm asking you to marry me because it's the only way I know to truly protect you from what's coming. His thumb traced circles on my palm. The FBI won't stop. They'll keep coming after you, using you to get to me. But as my wife, he paused, you'd be safer, legally protected. It should have been the least romantic proposal in history. Instead, my heart was racing. And if I say yes, I whispered, what then? His eyes held mine. And you become mine in every way that matters. And I become yours. The courthouse was surprisingly quiet for a Thursday afternoon. No white dress. No flowers. No guests except Constantine's lawyer and 2 witnesses I didn't recognize, men in dark suits who watched the proceedings with the alertness of trained soldiers. The judge was efficient, almost bored as she walked us through the ceremony. Standard vows, legal language, signatures on documents that would bind us together in the eyes of the law. When Constantine slipped the ring onto my finger platinum, simple, beautiful, I felt the weight of what we were doing settle into my bones. I now pronounce you husband and wife. Just like that, Emma Hayes became Emma Volkov. Constantine's kiss was brief, appropriate for the sterile courthouse setting. But his eyes held promises the judge couldn't see. We signed papers in the clerk's office. Marriage certificate, name change documentation, legal forms that would make me untouchable to federal prosecution. Protection wrapped in bureaucracy. Congratulations, the lawyer said, shaking our hands. Mrs. Volkov! The name felt foreign on my tongue, yet somehow right. Back at the penthouse, Constantine poured champagne. To my wife, he said, raising his glass. The bravest woman I've ever known. Or the most foolish, I countered, but smiled as I touched my glass to his. We drank in silence, the enormity of what we'd just done hanging between us. This wasn't a fairy tale wedding. No reception, no first dance, no family celebrating our union. Just 2 people who'd found each other in violence and darkness, choosing to face whatever came next together. But that night, In the quiet of his bedroom, with the city lights glittering below, Constantine made different vows. He knelt before me, still wearing his wedding suit, and took my hands in his bandaged ones. "I promise to give you freedom within the constraints of my world," he said, his voice low and fierce. "I promise never to lie about who I am or what I've done. I promise to protect you, even from myself when necessary." His thumb traced my wedding ring. "And I promise that loving you is the only purely good thing I've done in 10 years. Tears blurred my vision. I sank down to meet him, our foreheads touching. "I promise to stand beside you," I whispered, "to see you clearly, all of you, and choose you anyway. I promise not to run when things get dark. And I promise that loving you is the bravest, most honest thing I've ever done." He kissed me then, and we made love with the tenderness of new vows and the intensity of old passion. His touch was reverent, worshipful, as if I was something precious he couldn't quite believe he got to keep. When I fell asleep in his arms, I wore nothing but his ring and his scent on my skin. I woke to grey dawn light and found him watching me, propped on one elbow. "How long have you been awake?" I asked, my voice rough with sleep. "Hours." His fingers traced idle patterns on my bare shoulder. "I keep thinking I'll wake up and find this was a dream, that you'll have come to your senses and left." I caught his hand, pressing a kiss to his palm. "I'm real. This is real. And I'm not going anywhere. Any regrets?" he asked quietly. "About yesterday. About becoming my wife." I looked at this complicated, dangerous man who'd somehow become my home. Not one. Relief and something deeper, love, gratitude, wonder crossed his face. He pulled me close and I felt his heartbeat against mine, steady and sure. His phone shattered the moment. Constantine tensed immediately, reaching for it with the instincts of a man always expecting bad news. He answered in Russian, his voice clipped. I watched his expression shift: confusion, then understanding, then a cold fury that made the air around us feel sharp. He ended the call, his jaw set in granite. "What's wrong?" I asked, already knowing whatever he said would change everything. His eyes met mine and I saw the apology in them before he spoke. "They've taken your brother." The words didn't make sense. Couldn't make sense. "What?" "Sokolov's people grabbed Danny from campus an hour ago." His voice was deadly calm, the tone of a man planning violence. "They want me to surrender territory and pay $2 million in ransom, or they'll kill him." Ice flooded my veins. My baby brother. The boy I'd raised after Mum died, whose college tuition I'd worked 2 jobs to afford. "We'll pay," I said immediately. "Whatever they want. It's not about money, Emma." Constantine was already moving, pulling on clothes with military precision. "It's about power. About making me look weak." He turned to me. "But they made a mistake. They touched what's mine." The possessive edge in his voice should have frightened me. Instead, it made me feel safe. "Get him back," I said. "Whatever it takes, Constantine. Get my brother back." His smile was cold and sharp as a blade. "I already have people moving. By tonight, Danny will be home safe." He cupped my face. "And Sokolov will understand exactly what happens when someone threatens my family." The War Room Inn. Constantine's downtown office building was nothing like the elegant penthouse. Concrete walls, multiple screens displaying security feeds, and a table surrounded by men whose eyes held the same cold calculation as my husband's. This was the heart of his empire, the place where violence was planned with the precision of a business meeting. I stood in the corner, watching Constantine command his forces like a general preparing for battle. 3 teams, he said, pointing to blueprints of a warehouse. "Danny's being held here, north side. 8 guards, maybe more. I want him extracted within the hour." "And Sokolov?" one of the men asked. Constantine's smile was sharp enough to cut. "Leave him to me." They moved with practiced efficiency, checking weapons, coordinating timing. I saw Constantine's world in full for the first time, not the luxury and protection, but the machinery of violence that kept it running. He noticed me watching and crossed the room. "You shouldn't be here." "Yes, I should. I held his gaze. He's my brother. I need to see this. Something flickered in his expression, respect, maybe, or concern. This is who I am, Emma. What I do. If you have any doubts, I don't. I took his hand, feeling the tension humming through him. Bring him home. He kissed me once, hard and claiming, then turned back to his men. Move out. The next 2 hours were the longest of my life. I watched security feeds, listened to coded radio chatter, and tried not to imagine all the ways this could go wrong. Then, package secured. No casualties on our side. Relief nearly drove me to my knees. Constantine appeared on one of the screens, Danny beside him, shaken but whole. My brother's eyes were wide with shock, but he was alive, unharmed. They're 10 minutes out, one of the men told me. I was waiting when they arrived. Danny stumbled out of the SUV and I caught him, holding him tight as he shook. Emma, he choked out. What the hell is going on? Who are these people? I'll explain everything, I promised. But you're safe now. That's all that matters. Constantine stood back, giving us space, but I saw the satisfaction in his eyes. The protection of what was his. Executed perfectly. Later, after Danny was settled in a guest room with security posted outside, Constantine found me on the terrace. Sokolov won't retaliate, he said quietly. I made sure he understood the cost of threatening my family. I didn't ask what that meant. Didn't need to. Thank you, I said instead, for saving him. He's yours, which makes him mine. He moved closer, his hand settling at the small of my back. But, Emma, you need to understand what this means. Everyone you love becomes a target. Your brother will need protection now. Your friends, anyone close to you, they're all potential leverage. The weight of it settled over me, the true price of loving Konstantin Volkov. You can still leave, he said, and I heard the rawness beneath his controlled tone. Take Danny. I'll set you both up somewhere safe, far from this world. You deserve a normal life, Emma, a life without constant danger. I turned to face him fully, seeing the fear he was trying to hide, the fear that I'd finally had enough, that I'd choose safety over him. Do you want me to leave? I asked. No. The word came out broken. God help me. No. But I love you enough to let you go if that's what you need. I took his face in my hands, this dangerous, complicated man who'd become my everything. I chose you the moment I whispered that warning in the restaurant. I chose you when I unpacked my bag. I chose you in front of the FBI, and at the courthouse, and every single day since, I pressed my forehead to his. I choose you now, Constantine. Today, tomorrow, always. That's final. He pulled me against him, and I felt him tremble, this man who commanded fear and respect, who'd orchestrated a military precision rescue, undone by my choice to stay. Then I'll spend my life making sure you never regret it, he whispered into my hair. I know, and I did know, whatever darkness lay ahead, whatever violence touched the edges of our life, we'd face it together. I'd made my choice. And I'd keep making it every single day for the rest of my life. Epilogue. 6 months later, Emma's Bakery opened its doors to a line that stretched around the block. I stood behind the counter in flour-dusted jeans and my grandmother's apron, watching customers' faces light up as they tasted the sourdough I'd perfected over countless early mornings. Constantine sat in the back corner booth, pretending to read the newspaper, but watching me with barely concealed pride. Security lingered outside, discreet but present, a reminder that my world would never be completely normal. But it was mine, a piece of light I'd carved from his darkness. Danny worked the register, fully aware now of who his brother-in-law was and what that meant. He'd chosen to stay close, to be part of this unconventional family we'd built. As the afternoon rush died down, Constantine approached the counter. "How's my wife, the baker?" he asked, his eyes warm, exhausted and happy. I leaned across to kiss him, not caring who saw. "How's my husband, the businessman?" he supplied with a slight smile. "Right, businessman." He took my flower-covered hand, his thumb tracing over my wedding ring. No regrets. I looked around at the bakery I'd built, at my brother laughing with a customer, at the life I'd somehow made possible by choosing a dangerous man in a dark restaurant. Not one, I said. Not a single one. And as Constantine pulled me close, pressing a kiss to my temple, I knew one truth with perfect certainty. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose love over safety, darkness over light, and trust that the man who lives in shadows will guard your light with everything he has. I'd made my choice, and I'd never looked back.